Entonces les presento esta persona terriblemente disruptiva, Michelle Baker.
Excellent. There are many ways to bring change in new business models. Some of them are well understood, well researched, and they involve incremental change, going to your customers, talking about what they want, expanding your business into a line of business that's close and that's expected. And that is an aspect of change and new business models that I will not be talking about today. I think many of you are experts in that already. And the aspect of building new business models that I want to talk about is the kind of change that comes to you, that we don't control, and that sort of is in the environment and happens to us. And so change, it sounds great sometimes, or disruption is exotic and exciting. New business models make us think life will be better. But the thing, especially the technology industry doesn't talk about so much, is the change can be very difficult. And disruption can be very painful. It's very exciting to be disrupting things and making new ideas. It's very difficult to be part of the status quo and have disruption roll in upon us. And this is both in business and a part of human nature, which is captured in a quote from the man who used to run Netscape. People love progress. It's change they can't stand. And so very often, the excitement of progress and a better world sort of pulls people forward. But the reality of it in our daily life, and especially in our business and sometimes family life, is the change makes people uncomfortable. And so when we think about new business models and taking advantage of new opportunities, the technology in the business is important, but the hardest thing is the mindset of people, how to approach change, how to think about it, how to get past discomfort. Because over and over and over again, the best laid plans get lost when your colleagues or employees are uncomfortable with change. Laura, if you would. And so sometimes there's a reaction to say, I don't want change, especially if life is good, if our business seems stable, and the status quo seems acceptable. And in that case, you have to be careful of a couple things. One, of course, is the change is coming to us. We live in an era of massive change. The social, political, economic systems are changing. Geopolitics is changing today. And of course, the technology of the network, the internet, causes massive change. And so even when we're comfortable, change is coming. So it's my belief that the changes caused by the internet are just beginning. And that the ability to be connected on a global basis in real time will affect ever more businesses as we go forward. It can be wildly disruptive. It could be incremental. We hope if we manage it well, it becomes progress. And so change also brings immense amounts of social and economic value. If we think about the internet 20 years ago, when the internet first came into public life 20 years ago, a browser called Mosaic, 1992 or 93. We've seen immense changes since then, and a layer of social benefit and economic benefit that was unimaginable at the time. And more of that is coming. And so that leads to the question, are we ripe for disruption? There are some people, typically the new ideas or the startups, who aren't part of the business world yet or aren't part of the status quo, whose whole goal is disruption. And then there's the set of people who are already engaged in commerce or successful or for whom the status quo makes sense. And then the question to ask is, are we really ripe for disruption? What would it look like? What would it feel like? How can we think through disruption so that we have a higher chance of getting to progress, not just change? And I see we've lost the slides for a moment. Would be nice to get them back. But, so are you ripe for disruption? And I'll use as an example here the Blue E, which of course was Internet Explorer. So a company, Microsoft, really had a very fine business model. The status quo was Microsoft's. It had a monopoly, actually, of almost the entire computing environment. And so life was pretty good. And then the web came along. And Microsoft's response to that was very agile. They moved very quickly. They created a product. They used all their business assets. They engaged in a range of activities, some very productive, like their product, some wildly illegal. But they worked very hard to take the change, the disruption, the web, and get it into the Microsoft system. And that's what the blue E represented. And it worked for a while. It worked because their existing products, the status quo that they had built, allowed them control over a vast part of the industry. And they were able to direct a large amount of economic innovation and incentive and focus into their pre-existing system. And so for a while, it really seemed as if maintaining the status quo and rolling change into Microsoft was going to work. Except for this. And this is the core team of people who produced Firefox. Because we could tell that the web was bigger than Microsoft. The web is bigger than anyone, and the network should be opportunity for all businesses and openness and freedom for all citizens. And it was clear that trying to run that through the blue E would not provide opportunities for economic benefit for the same number of companies and organizations. It wouldn't allow the internet or the web to become global. It wouldn't allow for the kinds of local economic and social and cultural decisions that are critical for the future. And it wouldn't allow me as a consumer to go to the businesses I wanted to, and it wouldn't allow those businesses to reach me. And that the technology level would be determined by one great company. And so all of those things made it clear to us that the status quo could not happen. So this is a phase where Mozilla was intentionally disruptive. And we succeeded because we were totally different. All of the things that Microsoft had done that worked in the previous era were not so important to us. So Mozilla is a nonprofit, precisely because Microsoft had made an environment where there was no economic benefit to be gained, and because the degree of freedom that we want for individuals and businesses and local organizations globally didn't fit for us with generating our own economic value. And so we organized ourselves as a nonprofit, very different in the technology world. And we organized ourselves as a nonprofit that competes in technology and product. So very, very different. And as you can see, we certainly don't look like business people in that era. And we certainly don't look like the core set of people that could change an industry. And so these forms of disruption are hard to see. And that's why, when you feel sort of comfortable, can I get that? It's time to really look up. And I would urge that everyone be experimenting with discomfort, because change, again, is coming. And it may be wildly disruptive. And part of the success each of us will have is how accustomed we are to being profoundly uncomfortable, and to having people with ideas that really challenge us, the status quo, our place in the status quo, our success, and the criteria for our success is important. So here I've put this little experimentation area, in orange, inside a nicely constrained environment. And so sometimes people experiment with discomfort by building a lab in their organization and taking new ideas and building a different part of the organization where those ideas can grow on their own and they can be sort of disruptive even to your own organization or your own business, but they're a little off on the side and so they don't get killed. And we've done that at a few phases in Mozilla as well. And that works well because the ideas can prosper and grow a little bit. So somebody can have an idea that might be really scary to your business, but they can be exploring it without the rest of your organization sort of shutting it down. Now, when they get to a good idea that might fit in your business, the difficulty is bringing that idea from the lab back into the core of the business. And typically, there's a very high rate of rejection at that point. And so if you experiment with discomfort by putting it off in a lab, then you'll need to work very, very hard when there's an idea that you think should be brought into the business. Sometimes people try to experiment with new scary ideas right in the heart of the business. And if that sounds interesting, you need a consistent, utterly determined view from someone very senior in management to make that work. Probably the CEO, plus a range of other people. Because the resistance to change and scary new ideas is everywhere, and it pops up all of the time. It's actually why I call it human nature. And so if you want to experiment within the existing parts of your organization, there's a very consistent, constant need to be nurturing the scary ideas. And so that means, I think each leader should be doing a little bit of self-analysis. What is my interaction to change? So me, for example, Mitchell, I know most people really don't like change. They're uncomfortable with change. So I'm not one of those people. I'm on the other side. I like change. Even when something really scary happens, like when there was a big fire in our neighborhood in my childhood house. We weren't really sure for a while whether it had been burned down or not. But my dad and then I were already planning what the future would look like. All the things we didn't like about our house that this fire would give us the chance to actually change. And so if you're a person who loves change and responds well to it, even in a sort of uncomfortable setting, that's great. If you're not, then I would encourage you to look for people like that. And that will be difficult because they will look and feel different. They're probably not mainstream. And so if you experiment with discomfort, right here it's nicely contained. But of course the success condition is that it's not contained. That the experimental ideas within your business and in your organization are spreading on their own. Because that is success. The things that are disruptive and that are positive progress, well, even the bad ones, they spread in an environment where the environment welcomes them. And so if you've got an idea that's disruptive enough and it changes something and the change is positive, as we'll hear in the panel that follows, right, it will spread on its own. And so if you do experiment with discomfort, there will probably come a time where you look up and think, oh, that's enough. I don't want that. Look, it's crossed out of the box. I made it. So I encourage you at that moment to really try to step aside and ask the opposite question. Is that possibly success? Is that the change that I really want to be building into my business? Can we go to the next slide? And so how does one do this? One key way is to foster diversity into the inputs in your organization. And this is the Mozilla method. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization. We succeed based on the number of people who feel that the mission of Mozilla is important and contribute to it. And our mission is to build a public benefit layer to the internet so that it's open and accessible to everyone. On a global basis, whether you're a business or a consumer or a citizen, whatever it is that you're trying to do, the internet is available to you. And so we have local communities around the globe, including a very, very active one here in Mexico. And the local volunteers are a key part of our input and decision making because the volunteers are a very interesting management challenge. They're there because they believe in the mission and they want to see the internet as an open platform for all of us. Because they're not employees, they're devoting their own time and attention, but they are much more likely to keep coming back to things where they don't think I'm doing a good enough job. So just last week we had a gathering of key Mozilla volunteers from around the world, and one of them came to me to talk about his region, and he said, Mitchell, all this stuff you're doing is nice and it's a good start and we're excited, but I'm not so sure you're really serious. Because if you were really serious, here are the other 5 things you're doing. And so are you going to do them or not? Like, are you going to prove to me that you're serious about my region so that I can continue to invest my time and energy? And so those kinds of voices are really key, and they're often not mainstream. So this is the Mozilla way. Let me get the next slide. And the world, at the different organization, the World Economic Forum has also been doing something similar. For many years, of course, there's been a layer of suggestions to the World Economic Forum that their membership is too elite, and that it didn't have enough people experiencing the world as a young person, or the world before success, or from the full range of humanities diversity. And so they began building programs. One is the Young Global Leaders, and I believe that Carlos Moto is one of Mexico's examples into that program. But that was a program designed to start getting, at the time, much younger voices in new areas into the World Economic Forum. Since then, they've established another program, the Global Shapers, people under 30. So people who have good ideas and have accomplished things, but haven't had the kind of global economic success that the World Economic Forum is known for. And so I encourage anyone who's thinking about diversity and disruption to find some way to get uncomfortable, different voices into your decision making, because that drives a layer of challenge that it's very hard to do from your own mind. Can I? And I know this, so check your diversity would be the message. And if you start to see slides that look like this, beware. Like, this is a slide where you're checking all the people you already know. You check your users, your board, your employees, feels inclusive. But that, if you see that slide, you're not in the right zone, because the right zone has the people who seem freakish to you, or the people who seem weird, or the people who don't understand your business, or for some reason you just don't seem to make sense. So that's the set of people where the true disruption will come from. If you could imagine Microsoft coming to the group of us in that picture, we would not feel like them. And so you really need to push yourself on that. And I speak from some experience, because Mozilla has faced disruption ourselves. We succeeded on the desktop, and we're able to bring a layer of openness and a level playing field for business into the desktop. But then, of course, the mobile world exploded. And we all knew it was coming, and all of us were working on things. But of course, it was Apple that really changed the game and caused things to explode. Very disruptive for us, because, next slide, if you could, because with the browser in the old world, we were able to bring a level of openness and freedom just through the browser. But in the mobile environment, that's not the case. You need chips, you need hardware, you need software, you need apps, you need a marketplace. It's a much broader range. And so that was intensely disruptive to us. We took some time to figure out what should we do about it. Now, I wish we didn't need to take time, but we did. So we took it. And for us, the web is important. People think of the web as the browser, or maybe a set of technologies. We think of the web as freedom and opportunity and an equal playing field based on a set of technologies and protocols. And so those areas of openness and freedoms for business, for citizens, for consumers are key. Otherwise, the internet becomes a tracking, stalking device with no benefit. At the same time, the mobile world has freedom in price, affordability, cost, also mobility, personalization, usefulness. So in the middle of the disruption that the rise of mobile has caused for us, we've taken the time to meld the things we care about with the new environment. And that's our effort. We call Firefox OS, but the core of this effort is to bring the freedoms and openness we've been accustomed to with the web and the level playing field for all businesses globally into the personalization and flexibility and affordability of mobile devices. We see this as really important, not just for phones and tablets, but because everything is becoming connected. And in the next few years, the number of devices that will be connected and smart will explode. Everything, my shoes could be smart. My shoes could tell me at the end of the day what my posture is like. You know, have I fixed my ankle injury? Right? We're just at the beginning of what the network will do. And so the idea, our path through this disruption is to build an alternative, challenging, where we hope we'll have an open layer across the network for all that we do. And so it's been important to us, and I believe you'll find important to you, that when you're dealing with a disruption that's happened to you, to articulate clearly why your response will matter, or why it will be different, or why your response is not more of the same, only later. And so we took the time to identify this method of bringing the openness that we're based on into everything for the future. And so I think it'll be very interesting in the panel that follows, which certainly has a range of experience with disruption and change, to see not only what they've done, but also the kinds of disruptions that they feel will be coming into their world that they'll be responding to as well. And so our hope is, you know, clearly for Mozilla, that we're able to build openness and freedom into the network of tomorrow, and that for all of us, that this response to disruption and change helps us move from chaos, you know, to progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael Baker from Mozilla.